All right, folks, John Henning here with the Franchise Radio Show. Today, we're joined by Zach Butler, the founding partner of Horsepower Brands. Zach, thank you so much, buddy.
Hey, glad to be here, brother.
Looking forward to this one. I came in off the lake today fishing just so we could do this interview. So there you go.
I know, I feel so honored.
Well, see, I don't go fishing, I go catching.
I've heard that definition. That's a big definition difference.
That's right. That's right. You got to define that, right? So I was sitting out in a kayak this morning, sitting out there literally just reeling them in left and right. And I was like, oh, shoot, man, it's 11 o'clock. I got to get in off the dock. Hey, before we jump into the business side of things, let's talk a little bit about Zach. Kind of tell us who you are, where you're from, and then we'll just let that kind of lead right into, kind of how you got into franchising. Would love to hear your story.
Yeah, I'm from a really small rural town in Nebraska, Pender, Nebraska. Fun fact, I think my wife and I, when we moved back with our daughter, we moved back to the small town. I think we raised the population to above 1,000. I think it went from 999 to 1,002. Grew up in my grandpa bought a livestock auction business in 1969, was the first entrepreneur in my family. Grew up in that business from all the way from when I was really little until I went to college. And then my dad now runs that business today. It's still in operation. My grandpa still does the books by hand. So we came from like a small rural town we didn't really have much, but hardworking family in the blue collar space.
That's awesome, man. It actually reminds me a little bit about my background. We grew up on a homestead in central Pennsylvania. Yeah, we liked it. We grew up, we homesteaded, off we grew all of our own food, and I hunted and fished a lot. And, it kind of actually led me into one of the work ethic scenario, right? All right, man, good deal. So how'd you get into franchising? I kind of read a little bit online here on your LinkedIn profile before we jumped on, but give our listeners a little bit about your background on franchising. I know you've got an extensive, and you started pretty young, right?
Really young. So I've been in franchising 16 years, and I just happened when I went to college, I walked by a nutrition store that had just opened, and the background on that is that the gentleman that had the top grossing GNCs in the country developed his own products, sold those locations, and started a competitor, and that was called Complete Nutrition. And
Okay.
When I started, I was a part-time associate at 18, and a few weeks later I think somebody quit and somebody left or got moved, and there was no one to manage the store, so I became the manager by default.
By
I'll never
default,
forget,
yeah.
I said, how much does a manager make? And they're like, 85,000. I go, I'll be the manager until you find someone better.
Right.
And I quit going to school, paid people to do online classes, and took that to the top producing location. And so I was good at that, and I was really grinding to network within the community and build that up. And hit the founder of that business really wanted to franchise it. That was his goal. And so it was interesting as I got to be on the front lines as one of the 5 managers, even at a young age, to be on the product development board and test CRMs and help with ops manuals and things. And they launched the first franchise, which was his nephew. And I never forget when he opened, I would call him every day because we had worked, almost together almost quite a bit. And I was like, this is exactly what I need to do. I need to be a franchisee. So I had saved $20,000, and I went to the founder and I had this big plan where I said, here's how much money you could make on the store I'm managing now. Here's how much you could make if I was a franchisee off the royalties, and I could bring someone in to replace me at less cost. And he goes, I said, all you need to do is co-sign an SBA loan. And
Did you do it?
I think I got 5 minutes into my presentation. He goes, I'm in, let's do it. And so went down to Tallahassee, Florida, and didn't know a soul. And that would have been when I was 21.
Okay.
And so it was a great experience. Did over $1 million the first year. Felt like you're walking on water, crushing life, and opened another location within a year of that location. And that location was on pace to do $1 million. So that's why I kind of pushed all the chips in, and I acquired 3 more underperforming that were in Florida, and I opened 2 more. And I had those kind of just marching down this path to do 8 million in revenue. That was my goal. Well, I learned some valuable lessons along that journey. Number one, if you're going to sell weight loss supplements or weight loss products, 2 things happen to those customers after you sell them those products.
Okay.
It works and they don't buy it again, or it doesn't work and they don't buy it again. And we learned that the hard way. And that business model had to go through a lot of overhauling. And at that same time, Amazon started selling stuff online.
Sure.
Bodybuilding.com. And so I had made a big mistake. I was personally guaranteed on all the leases for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, to be honest, didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I had 3 locations that were just getting crushed and sucking all my cash flow. And then I had 3 locations that were doing well and one just crushing it. and it just wasn't getting better. And I got into a place where I ran out of cash and I had to file bankruptcy and lost everything.
Yeah,
So
that's a tough
complete
lesson,
rock
yeah.
bottom. Now, not sure what I wanted to do next or what I was going to do. I was broke. And there was another franchisee at that time who had 10 or 15 locations. And my gift was sales, marketing, and people. I didn't have the back office, operational or financial acumen or the business acumen, because I think I was 22 or 3 when this was happening.
Sure.
And looking back, I'll never forget. I said, I can improve your margins, I can improve EBITDA, I can find people, and I'll work 120 hours a week. And I said, but I want equity in future locations. And so what we did was I came on with a $23,000 annual salary distribution, basically.
Mhm.
And that covered all my bills with a little bit of a buffer. And we rolled, and we grew that to 68 locations in 3 years, and then operated that business for a decade, and we built it up to 40 million in revenue.
That was still Complete Nutrition?
That was still Complete Nutrition. So at
Gotcha.
the end of that, the corporate entity sold to private equity, and
Yep.
they were making some big changes that my partner was on board with. And so at that time, we parted ways, and I took a big haircut on the equity that I had.
Mhm.
And we then, I remember that was a Friday. Monday it came around, I didn't have to go into work for like the first time in a long time. And what am I going to do now? So I got into consulting and development. And the first brand that I worked with was Monster Tree Service, who is my now partner. That was his first brand.
Okay.
And there's people that you're just destined, I think, to meet and work with. And that would be Josh and I. I think we've talked every day for 7 years. And since that day, Josh and I have now, we've launched 9 franchise concepts together. And we're about to launch the 10th one in a few weeks. 8 of those would be under horsepower, but we built that business up. We were fortunate enough to sell Monster Tree to private equity to Authority Brands. During that process, we acquired another concept, which was Redbox Plus. It was a roll-off dumpster concept, and we did really well. We looking back, I had a lot of experience as a franchisee, and I had a lot of experience as an emerging brand and helping consult with brands. And Josh made a lot of mistakes with Monster and then paused development for 2 years. And then that's right when we started working together. So we went on this big run together. And as we grew, we got more experience. And that Monster was our first brand. Our second brand, we got better with Redbox. We awarded 300 locations in 3 years, opened everyone with no closures.
Wow.
So that was a big feat for us. And then Belfour came to us and said, well, they were our largest customer across the country, and they actually had spent more as a restoration company. Their line item expenditure for roll-offs was more than our annual franchisee revenue.
Right.
And so they're like, we're gonna buy a dumpster company, and we're your biggest customer. We're buying you. We said, okay.
Yeah, right.
And so we sold that to them, and then that led us into this position where we knew now how to take a brand from inception and grow it aggressively.
Right.
We were very well capitalized. We have experience. And so we launched Mighty Dog Roofing, which was the first entity under our horsepower umbrella. We think we made that leap during COVID in 2020, and we awarded the first franchise location, signed the first franchise agreement February of 2021.
All right. So you said, hey, we're going to start at the toughest time in business in COVID and launch a brand new brand.
Go all in and chips all in on a franchise brand and launch it during 2020. Yeah, that's interesting how that works. I mean, we were blessed. Today, Mighty Dog Roofing is on pace to probably have 500 territories awarded this year. We'll do far over 100 million in annual revenue. And since that day, we've now launched 6 more franchise concepts. 1 more we'll be launching in 30 days, as well as 10 supporting entities that support our franchisees. So Horsepower's around 300 employees, 15 entities, and just in a short period of time.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Zach, because I understand the model that you're running there, and I want to make sure folks are listening that you guys own all of your concepts, right?
Correct.
You own all the brands that you're operating right now. You own them. It's obvious, but I want to make sure we talk about it. What's the benefit of having all of those brands? They're complementary, customer share, just walk us through just the basics on that so everybody understands.
Yeah, we have very specific criteria on what we're looking for, and it's all home service based.
Right.
We want brands that are centered around the home, that are large average unit volume concepts, that where there's a lot of consumer demand and competition, but where that competition is extremely fragmented. What better place for a franchise concept to come in by leveraging systems, processes, and technology to disrupt a fragmented industry. And that's really what we put our focus around. But one of the things that we really believe in, John, is I think traditionally the idea in franchising is that you just keep buying more and more locations.
Right.
That's what I did. That did not serve me well in the beginning. I wasn't diversified. I had too many eggs in one basket, and it was very hard to manage. So we really do believe now is that as we are a portfolio company, we have brands underneath us. We're really pushing our franchisees to not expand out, but stack on brands in a smaller footprint so they can diversify their risk, cross-market their customers, leverage real estate and equipment and people.
I love it. I love it. I knew that's where you were going to go with that. So I was already expecting you to say, because it makes sense, just like you're a portfolio brand company. And if you have a good operator, I mean, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but if you've got a good franchise operator, right, then, and they can duplicate within and capitalize on that economy of scale of already having employees, equipment, locations, customers, right? I mean, I would imagine that their ramp period is crunched down, profitability is thicker. I mean, it just makes so much sense to look at it that way versus, let's go out and rinse and repeat, Mighty Dog Roofing in 15 different markets. Let's take 10 different brands and just pile them on top of each other in this market.
Well, and I think that's important for a couple of reasons. Expectations is one of the things that if you've never, a lot of franchisees are first-time business owners.
Yep.
And owning a business is not easy, but once you go through that one time, you are much better prepared for the next one. And
Sure.
we're very transparent with candidates. We want them to build an asset to sell to create wealth. That's really what we're pushing for. I think a lot of franchisors tend to get a little sensitive around that conversation, but that's a benefit for us. And so we believe that private equity or the resale or private equity will come in and evaluate the resaleability of it's in a smaller footprint. It's got the same people. It's leveraging cross-marketing the same customer base. It's going to be easier to manage that entity or that business offering or asset than there's 5 states with 15 locations. Go try to manage that.
Yeah.
And the multiple of stacking those brands, we believe is going to be significantly higher than what it would be is if you had the same EBITDA spread across 4 states.
Man, I just love that idea. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, I've seen franchisees buy other brands in their local markets, but not from a portfolio company, right? You've got the fitness guy that, tacks on a few food and then he tacks on a service or something like that from 3 or 4 different franchise entities out there because they have a little bit of that infrastructure. You might see the Taco Bell guy,
Yep.
might own a couple of Arby's, that kind of thing, right? But I did not realize the depth of what you were talking about there. It just makes so much sense to be able to pile those or layer them on there. Even just thinking just from a customer acquisition standpoint, my customer acquisition cost has got to be so much lower because I already have the customer, right?
Well, and one thing we're rolling out is a platform, kind of like, Marriott has lots of hotels underneath and you get Marriott rewards.
Yep.
And we're working on a platform that we're going to roll out that does that same thing.
I love it.
So but I think it's, we're doing something that's not typical. Most of the portfolio companies are buying mature-based franchises.
Correct.
Getting them from 1 to 100 is the hardest part of the process. And we have launched more emerging brands from 1 to 100 locations than anyone in franchise history. And so we have the most experience doing it, and we're very well capitalized. So we don't want to go out there and pay large sums of money for a brand that has existing problems, and we can start them the right way from the beginning. And if you're part of that journey in the beginning, we're adding on brands that have a lot of open availability that you can add on. That's something that other portfolio companies don't have.
Man, I could just think of so many different benefits of that, man. Seriously, I'm so excited about talking with you here today, even more so than when I stopped fishing, right? But I'm just thinking about all the different things, even from a franchise sales perspective, right? You're bringing another brand on. I'm a franchise developer with you now. I've got more inventory to be able to sell to existing franchise owners and still bring new people in as well. And then we talk about acquiring, retail level customers or consumers, but think of it back one step, right? Because we know in franchising you really have 2 customers. You got the franchisees and the end user, right? So now you've got built-in customer base to roll out that new concept. So I'd imagine as a franchisor, your ramp time to get to that 0 to 100 on the units is going to be condensed down as well, right?
Oh my gosh. I think what we're trying to build is how do we create a successful model that can drop as much profit to the bottom line for the franchisees? Because we know that Profitable franchisees are happy franchisees.
Right?
Profitable franchisees recruit other franchisees, and
Right.
profitable franchisees reinvest in their business and grow bigger revenues, which we collect royalties on. So it's a win-win for us. But customer acquisition is getting more and more difficult in this world. I mean, the Google's getting at such a hyper local level where you got to
Yep.
be very creative with a lot of your strategy. But if we have 5 brands in Birmingham, Alabama, and a new brand opens up, I mean, there's a cross marketability to those other brands that are there that there's an advantage for.
Yeah, you get the runway just is so much smoother. The runway's not gravel, it's like glass, right? So your ramp time's much better. And then obviously from a development standpoint, your developers are talking to candidates and just going through that process. So now you've got the refined process. You've done it 8 times, well, really 10 times, but 8 times under horsepower, right? And so you've got all those kinks worked out. I'm assuming there's economy of scales on the technology side as well. I'm sure you don't have 8 different technology centers, one for each franchise, right?
Well, no. So most of them run on a very similar, if not the same platform. Now, there are some industries like roofing where
Sure.
there's a specific platform that links with a lot of the distributors that we want to leverage. But
Makes sense.
one of the things that we're pushing very hard is a referral database. So it's a different strategy to go out and find a customer than it is to go out and find somebody that can send you customers.
Yes.
And so you can't manage that process in multiple different CRMs. And so we built our own CRM for that process. So if you're a franchisee and I say, hey, go out and create referral partners. Well, you just signed a franchise agreement, you don't know jack squat about the insulation industry, and now you're going to go talk to builders. You're probably going to feel a little bit overwhelmed and intimidated.
Right.
So this platform, it can not only just store the candidates or the contact information and give you a follow-up platform, but it's got where to go, what to bring, a script on what to say, a prep guide on making sure you know your information. And so it's not just, hey, go out and do it. It's, hey, here's what you're going to go do. Here's where you're going to do it. Here's what you're going to say, when you're going to say it. And here's what you're going to do to follow up. Here's what you're going to ask them. It's completely baked out. And when we build that in a market, now we have contact on one referral partner that could be for multiple brands.
I love it. I love it. So let's from as a potential franchise owner, right? I've got my entrepreneur hat on now. I'm outside of the Philadelphia market and I approach you guys and say, hey, I'm interested in the roofing franchise, right? It's Mighty Dog, was it?
Yep.
Yep. So Mighty Dog Roofing, I'm interested in that one. As you know, a lot of entrepreneurs think they want to own a certain type of business, but then they learn about that business like, oh yeah, that's not for me. Correct me if I'm wrong, with having that portfolio of brands, if I'm a potential entrepreneur, am I able to look at, different opportunities with you at the same time, or do I have to finish looking at Mighty Dog before I can really explore, the other franchise?
You can check out whatever you like. And so, I think what we try to do is we try to, I would say, provide suggestions based on net worth or liquidity,
Right.
or business acumen. Some of our brands are going to be much bigger businesses than others. And so like our installation business is an example. That is an opportunity for a candidate to build a big business. And so there are certain people that are going to be attracted by that and certain people that are going to be very intimidated. And so it's a different type of owner that might buy something like that than, like a typical mosquito franchise that's not going to have the average unit volume.
So you've got Horsepower is the umbrella brand. Run us down the list of the franchise companies so we know what categories and industries we're talking about.
So Horsepower is our umbrella, and that's the franchisee facing company.
Yep.
Our first brand was Mighty Dog Roofing. So Mighty Dog does roofing, siding, gutters, windows, and now solar.
Okay.
Our second brand was Blingle, which is outdoor lighting. So think landscape lighting, event lighting, holiday lighting, permanent lighting. Our third brand is iFoam Insulation. So spray foam, blow-in, fiberglass cellulose, both residential as well as residential.
Okay.
Then we have Heroes Lawn Care. So Heroes Lawn Care is a unique model. It's several concepts in one. It's fertilization, irrigation, pet waste removal, and mosquito services. So franchisees gravitate typically towards one of the services, and then they start to add on as they grow so they can diversify. It allows them to get lots of touches at a property and a better overall experience with the customer. Then we have Gatsby Glass, which is interior, exterior glass. So I think frameless shower doors, commercial, non-structural glass, partition walls, wine cellars, you name it. Then we got Groovy Hues painting, siding, gutters, power washing. And then we have Bumblebee Blinds, so window coverings, interior, exterior. Now the brand that's coming up is Stand Strong Fencing, so it'd be residential, wood, aluminum, and chain link fencing for both commercial and as well as residential.
Yeah, I can see how a lot of those are going to fit together with what we were just talking about there too, on that database scenario and referral, and the cross marketing, and all of that stuff, and then the layering for the franchisees. I can see how they could just plug and play. Some of those brands are really going to mesh together as well.
Well, and that's just half the company. As we started to build, and when you bring 50 franchisees in on one concept in a year, the vendors are licking their chops going, this is a great opportunity, but they have no way to keep up.
Right.
So you find this big dilution of support. So what we had to do to maintain that growth was start to either merge with, acquire, or start supporting businesses. So as of today, we have 8 other businesses. We own an accounting company called ZBooks. We own a recruiting firm, a digital marketing agency. We have a data analytics company, call center. And so we own those businesses, and what we can do that others can is that we can provide, we can take those entities and provide services to our franchisees at less cost than the competitors because we own the brand. And that's something that is a big advantage to us.
Man, that is a game changer right there. You had mentioned here, like at the beginning of the interview, that you had those other companies, but I didn't quite understand when you said you own those. It just makes sense. Like, if I need somebody for the books, I need somebody to help me with recruiting, I need somebody like all these different things that I know that I'm going to need as a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee, right? A Mumbo, right? And I need those things. If I can get them from the headquarters at a lower cost. I mean, obviously it's not even just about cost. You're inside the forest, right? Because you're inside that business. You created them around the franchisee. So you already know what services they actually need versus, say, a generic accountant that might be servicing, 30 different industries, right?
Well, and I think what a lot of franchisors that don't have experience, so most franchisors use QuickBooks Online as an example.
Yeah.
We know that you can't pull reports from QuickBooks Online through all the franchisees at once. You have to go into each individual account to do that. So we leverage a NetSuite platform where we have automated reports. Like I get an AR report generated every single Monday morning. So our COOs and our brand presidents get automated P&L reports sent every single month just through technology, through that platform. That really allows us to prevent catastrophic issues from happening with franchisees.
Now, you talked about starting the brands from scratch, right? And other portfolios will acquire. Anything out there that you would be interested in acquiring, or something that you would look at, or is it just all going to be from the ground?
Well, I think for us, there's a couple more industries we'd love to be in. We'd love to be in the residential flooring business.
Okay.
So carpet, hardwood floors, etc. The other would be the epoxy flooring garages. Sure. That's something that's also attractive. But there's lots of business opportunities. I think where our model is unique is that we've looked at some concepts, and I pick on mosquitoes a lot. I'm not sure why, but the average unit volume on a mosquito franchise is not high enough for us to cash flow our business. Yeah. So the amount of infrastructure that we put into a business day one, I mean, before we even have an FDD, there's typically $500,000 worth of payroll on a brand, not to mention the horsepower allocation. And so there wouldn't be enough royalty generated to support that business model. So we want large average unit volume concepts.
No, it makes sense. And plus you've already done it 8 times now, right? And soon to be 9, right? So, yeah. Hey, let's talk, from the entrepreneur side here, for the entrepreneurs listening in today. There's a lot of, you've got 8 brands right now. Which ones are kind of the shining stars out there that are just make so much sense for someone to take a look at? Give us just like your top 2 or 3. Are you allowed to like pick and choose within your own brands?
I'll tell you straight up, my favorite brand is iFoam Insulation. I like businesses that have large upsides where there's a barrier of entry where not everybody can do it. And so that is probably our biggest investment concept. But when you think about insulation and where it was 15 or 20 years ago, and I laugh because in roofing, Owens Corning is our largest partner.
Right.
And they also produce fiberglass insulation. So when we were looking at acquiring this concept, they were laughing at us saying, you don't want that spray foam. It's not the future. I'm not joking. Like 6 months later, Owens Corning acquired a spray foam manufacturer for like $400 million. And so that spray foam product is the future. It's a superior product. That's what a lot of the stuff is requiring now. And our franchisees are getting into business and they're winning big jobs. And that's a concept where you can build, I mean, a big business, and there's not a lot of sophisticated competition. So, I live an hour from Omaha, for an example. I couldn't find anybody to give me a quote on our building, and it was like an $80,000 project. And so a company from about an hour away drove and gave me that quote and did that work. But I called like 14 pages of Google trying to get somebody to get a quote for me. So there's a lot of opportunity, both commercial, residential, as well as agricultural, with that product, and that's where the industry is going. So when you think if you could get into the lighting business when LED lights first came out and popular, that would be an advantage. This is kind of what I think is that it's been there, it's been known, but now it's becoming the main product everybody's using.
And, insulation, back when I was in the service, I did carpentry, masonry, I did a bunch of that stuff when I got out of the service. So, insulation, you mentioned something earlier in this interview about, fragmented type industry, right? I mean, I don't know if there's really just a ton of, top players out there in insulation. So you got an opportunity, huge upside, significant barrier of entry, but I would imagine, just correct me if I'm wrong, that it's fairly fragmented out there too. So your systems, processes, and all of those different things we talked about should really benefit a franchisee in that case, right?
Well, I'll tell you, we're the first insulation company that has every one of the pieces of equipment that are being rolled out with an AI technology that generates to the cloud. So I can sit here from my office and I can see every location around the country. I can see how long the spray trigger has been engaged for, the temperatures that it's being sprayed at. And so there's a lot of data that we're able to collect at a franchisor level to provide training and benefit. And I mean, it's a night and day difference. I mean, the business that we acquired had one location, and what the equipment that he has compared to what we're starting with is, I mean, he's like, if I could have started like this, I could tell you like these guys are spoiled. That's what he says.
Well, man, I always have enjoyed doing these interviews. I want to give you the last, 10, 30 seconds here to kind of throw it out there. If folks are interested in reaching out to Horsepower and you like them to go to the individual brands, go to the parent website, anybody that's listening wants to learn more from you guys, how should they reach out to you guys?
Either one of those will generate to the same place.
Yeah, man, sounds good. I'll make sure to get all the brand info, all of the links from you, and we'll include it right there underneath of this audio interview. We'll put the actual direct links right to each website for you guys then as well, okay?
That sounds great, brother.
Cool, man. Well, there you go, folks. John Henning here with the Franchise Radio Show. Zach Butler, founding partner of Horsepower Brands. Zach, thank you so much, buddy.
You betcha. Thanks for having me.